I felt like such a young punk in the industry for a long time, and last year my company couldn't afford a fancy food booth, and I was pretty bummed about it. And then about 6 months later, Gretchen told me I was going to be on the cover of Fancy Food, and it was a real like, oh shit, okay. So a little bit about this big word, decolonizing. So how many of you know what decolonizing means? Okay, that is way more than I expected. The way I define decolonization is it's taking colonization, which was a system of aggregating power, and redistributing it. So it's not this like, I don't know, I think people can often call decolonizing something that's attributed to social justice warriors, and it's turned into a more political thing than what it fundamentally is, which is taking the power that you have and sharing it. How many of you know a little bit about the spice trade? Some shaky hands. So this spices have been traded across the world for thousands of years. People putting spices onto a boat and taking it to a new place is not a new thing. But the spice trade as we know it was 100% something that was created by colonizers. It was something that was created by the Portuguese, the Dutch, and the British to aggregate power, money, and resources what's the opposite of benefit? To the downside of the people growing those spices. And so when I'm talking about decolonizing the spice trade, I'm talking about returning power to people who for thousands of years have been systematically oppressed. I'm gonna go to the next one. All right, so this is what we do. I started the company 3 years ago. I was 23 years old. I was working as a marketing manager at Buy-Right. One of my favorites, Jenny, is over there. And I was realizing that, one, people that looked like me weren't visible within the food system. I wasn't seeing people of color. I wasn't seeing queer people. I wasn't seeing immigrants. Asian, Afro-Latino folks are going to be the future. And so it's about time the food system started actually like creating for them rather than just pandering to them. And specifically, I was born and raised in Mumbai. I moved here 6 years ago. This accent is 100% Nickelodeon. And essentially, I was asking people, you know, what in your store comes from India? And I was desperate. I mean, I was a homesick kid. I wanted to know where your spice is coming from, where your sesame seeds coming from, where your lentils coming from. And I was getting these very half-baked answers from people. People were like, it's made in India, you know, it's authentic, maybe it's organic. I heard from one particular chef that, oh, but it's from India, so it must be organic because farmers in India are so poor. And I was just like, oh, Jesus. So I was realizing that this idea of made in India was incredibly outdated and really needed an update because India, thanks to Western subsidies, has the highest rate of fertilizer overuse and dumping in the world. So this idea that because it's made in India, it's organic is incredibly flawed. And those were processes that were set in place by colonizers. And so India has never had the resources to really move past that. So what we do, and what I started this company in 2017 with $3K from my 2016 tax refund. I thought that was big money. That was a terrible thing. And we've now grown about 200x in the past 2 years, which is a pretty good indicator of the demand for this kind of business and this kind of work. I'm gonna go to, so I didn't know what I was doing. My first business plan was a pie chart. That's how little I knew what I was doing. And these were the 4 things I was super committed to. Number 1, source better. We've seen this in specialty coffee. We've seen this in bean to bar chocolate. That we've seen this in all the work you do with Fairtrade USA and Fairtrade Nationwide, that sourcing better is kind of the key to our food future. It's addressing climate change. It's addressing our health. But I think the other 3 things are the 3 things that I wasn't seeing that I think actually make up what decolonization looks like. I'm going to move my slides over. So the second thing is focusing on equity over ethical. When I first started visiting farms all over India, I visited 19 farms before we picked our turmeric farm. The New York Times just said that our turmeric and our pepper is the best out there, so we're feeling ourselves a little bit. But essentially, I was realizing that these farmers were getting paid usually 1/100th of the final price. So when people talk about, I'm paying them a 50% premium on the commodity rate, if the commodity rate was set by the British 150 years ago, and from there was really barely increments in increase in price, I don't know how a 50% premium is actually, or even a 15% premium, which is the fair trade standard for spices, actually does any work. We are giving our farmers between a 2x to a 10x premium. 2x is on spices like cardamom, which have a really high value, so 2x goes a long way. Our turmeric has a 6x premium. Our pepper has a 10x premium. And the way we're coming up with those prices is I'm sitting with our farmers and I'm saying, tell me your labor costs, tell me your water bill, tell me actually what you need in order to make this a sustainable business. I know you're growing the highest quality spices out there, but how can you continue to do that for the next 50 or 100 years? And how can your kids choose to do that? And that's paying you a 10x premium. Great, I'm going to pay that to you. As a result, and I think I kind of showed this here, is that the traditional commodity model goes through usually 10 plus hands. We act as the exporter in India, so that we have an export company and the importer here in the United States. Learning all that paperwork as a 23-year-old, not fun. But as a result, we're able to be so much more nimble in what we do. Number 3, I think I talked a little bit about made in India and this idea of updating what that means. I think a big incentive for starting this company was also for us, by us. Given that the future is going to be Asian, Afro, Latino, I think it's time that brands came up that we're actually marketing to and speaking truly from where we come from. I think a great example is Adidas just partnered with Beyonce, right? I think and that was a collaboration that did excellently, and that's because Adidas wasn't pandering. They were truly collaborating in a way that had impact. I'm a huge believer in telling the full story. Radical transparency is the future. I think brands like Everlane do an incredible job with that in the fashion industry. We publish all of our prices that we pay our farmers every year on our packaging. And our customers, it matters. We're still an 80% direct-to-consumer business, which is unheard of in a sleepy category like spices. Like somebody is going to our website and purchasing turmeric every 3 months. We have an 80% return customer rate. We've been able to build a business that essentially really, really draws loyal fans, beloved followers. And that's because we're telling them the nitty-gritty of what goes on every day and what that looks like. And I think that's a huge lesson for food brands right now, is that it's not 2010 anymore. Like, we're millennials, we're Gen Z, we have the internet. And then I think the last one is maybe the most contentious thing that I'm going to say is, why are you the best person to do this? I don't think you're the best person to do this because you have 5 million at your disposal or because you have a big grocery store. The reason I know and the reason I dig deep into being the best person to do this is because I'm from India. I'm 4th generation Mumbaikar. My family has worked in social change for 4 generations. I care deeply about my farmers. Their family are my family, which means that my incentive and my vested interest in their success and my interest in this not failing and being a success is deeper than probably anybody else's. And I think that ties back into customers. Customers see that. Customers know that. And so if you're launching an olive oil from Italy, it's probably a really good idea to work with a fantastic Italian producer rather than white label it. I think there's this huge case now for collaboration and public collaboration. We just did a collaboration with Jacobsen Salt that has been unreal, and it was such a great partnering of some of the best made in USA salt with some of the best made in India spices. So yeah, that was my very fast spiel. And that's how you can find me. I'm open to all questions after this. Thank you so much.